My name is Reverend Roy Fry. I am the Director of Service Ministries and the author of Getting Married in Illinois. This Wedding Minute will focus on who can perform a wedding in the state of Illinois. Mary wrote, "I could not stay for the entire webinar devoted to Getting Married in Illinois. Is there a recorded version available?" Because we have had similar requests for information about who can marry couples in Illinois, a portion of the webinar that Mary is seeking is included in this Wedding Minute. We're about to take a look at what it takes to legally perform a wedding in Illinois. If you are looking for a wedding celebration that will be conducted legally, grab a pen and paper and join me for an edited version of a webinar based on my book, Getting Married in Illinois. This particular portion of the webinar focuses on integrity, the integrity of your marriage, and who it is that is authorized to legally marry you in Illinois. The original webinar is about an hour long. This version is less than a half an hour. Okay, with no further questions on the marriage license process, let's move on to part 2 of this presentation. This part's going to answer the question, now that we have our marriage license, who can marry us? As we mentioned in the first segment, there are over 75,000 words in the Illinois Marriage Act. Thankfully, fewer than 200 of those words are devoted to answering the question about who can marry you in Illinois. And this makes answering the question very easy. The language used in Illinois law uses the word solemnize to describe the act of performing a marriage, while it uses this word officiant to describe a person solemnizing the marriage. The law is clear on who qualifies to be that officiant. When the word officiant is used, and this is important, it is always used in the context of the officiant being one of 5 classes of persons authorized to solemnize a marriage in the state of Illinois. So let's look at the 5 classes of individuals authorized to solemnize marriages in Illinois. The first is a judge or retired judge of what is described as a court of record. The second is a judge of the Court of Claims. Third would be a county clerk in counties that have more than 2 million residents. The next is a public official whose powers include solemnizing marriages. And the last one, the 5th one, is a clergy person described as being one in accordance with the prescriptions of a religious denomination and in good standing with his or her religious denomination is the way that it's described here. You should take notice, however, of what is not in the Marriage Act. There is no certified wedding officiant. There's no licensed to marry officiant. There's no internet or mail order officiant. And there's no I checked with the county clerk and they said it's okay officiant. So let's go back and take a look at each of these 5 classes that are authorized. The first, the judge or retired judge that is in good standing. That classification is a pretty easy one to understand and to be comfortable with. If you're seeking a marriage performed by a judge, this class of judges is the most likely class of persons authorized to solemnize your marriage. This is a pretty simple category in which you can avoid fraud. If you arrange to get married through the court's clerk when you're going to the local courthouse, you can be confident that no one is going to be in that setting and trying to convince you that they're a judge if in fact they're not. But if you are searching on the internet, believing that everything that you find there is legitimate, you may run into a number of people leading you to believe they are a justice of the peace. And while that sounds good, the problem is this: no such justice exists in Illinois. The office of Justice of the Peace in the state of Illinois was abolished over 50 years ago. So if you want to get married by a judge outside the courthouse, be sure to check with the local bar association to verify their claimed credentials. The next classification is a judge of the Court of Claims. Now this is hardly worth discussing because there are only 7 judges in the Illinois Court of Claims. These are positions appointed by the governor to handle claims against a state agency or a state employee, as well as other matters that might be considered by the Court of Claims. The next is a classification of people described as a county clerk of any county with over 2 million inhabitants. This is another class that's hardly worth discussion because there is only one county in Illinois that has more than 2 million inhabitants. Almost half of the nearly 13 million people who reside in Illinois live in Cook County. The next largest county is DuPage, and it houses less than 1 million people. So in this class, there is only one authorized person. That's the Cook County Clerk, David Orr. The next classification, the fourth one, is any public official who has powers to solemnize weddings. Someone who's been given the power to solemnize weddings as a public official. And this one has had me stumped for over 25 years. In all the research I did when writing the book Getting Married in Illinois, I could not find a single public official whose powers include solemnizing marriages. Which leaves us now with the last classification, and this is number 5, legitimate clergy. You will find more legitimate clergy than all the other classes combined. You will also find more illegitimate clergy than all the other classes combined. So when searching for someone to marry you outside the courtroom, how do you know that they are truly authorized by the state of Illinois to solemnize your marriage? Simply, this category includes clergy in good standing with their denomination. If you look at the definition here that they give for legitimate clergy, it says that they need to be clergy in good standing with their denomination. And so most of this segment is going to focus on that category. As you can see, from a practical standpoint, there are really only 2 viable considerations for your wedding officiant. First would be an authorized judge or an authorized clergy person. When it comes to judges, you may find a handful of deceitful people who will attempt to convince you that they're a judge. They may even represent themselves as a justice of the peace in their advertising, but these illegitimate officiants are pretty rare. After all, it takes a pretty bold person to claim the title of judge because they can easily be found. The next option is legitimate clergy, and you're going to find that most of the wedding officiant fraud in Illinois falls into this particular classification. As you recall, this class of officiants must meet 2 conditions to be authorized to marry someone in the state of Illinois. The first is to be connected with a legitimate denomination, and the second is to be in good standing with that denomination. On the Service Ministry's website and in the book titled Getting Married in Illinois, you will find a list of 10 questions to ask when considering someone to legally solemnize your marriage. The resource is free on the Service Ministry's website, and the book has a resource along with 3 answer sheets for interviewing potential wedding officiants. The 10-question resource is a great tool for helping you obtain peace of mind in knowing that the one who's going to be marrying you is legally authorized by the state of Illinois to do so. So let's take a look at the 10 questions that you should be asking. The first 6 address legitimacy, and the next 4 address your control over the content and assurance that you're going to be married on your scheduled wedding day. And then we'll conclude with a bonus question. The first question then is simply, are you ordained? You should ask every officiant that you're considering this very question. Because ordination is the official recognition by a religious body that someone is recognized as legitimate clergy. Cornell University Law School, when referencing the U.S. Code, defines legitimate clergy as follows, and please bear with me as I go through this. The term duly ordained minister of religion means a person who has been ordained in accordance with the ceremonial, ritual, or discipline of a church, religious sect, or organization established on the basis of a community of faith and belief, doctrines and practices of a religious character, to preach and to teach the doctrines of such church, sect, or organization, and to administer the rites and ceremonies thereof in public worship, and who, as his regular or customary vocation, preaches and teaches the principles of religion and administers the ordinances of public worship as embodied in the creed or principles of such church, sect, or organization. Now that's a lot more information, I'm sure, than what you wanted to really digest here. But simply asking the question, are you ordained, is going to help a lot in determining whether or not this person is who they say they are or claim to be. Second is, did you attend a seminary? Attending a seminary is the most usual route to a career in ministry. This question can also provide insight into the legitimacy of any credentials claimed by the potential officiant. If the person you are considering has not attended a seminary, this should be a red flag for you. It's a good time to point out, if at any time during the interview with your potential officiant that you develop concerns about their legitimacy, you don't have to continue. Simply thank them for their time. I know that this can be very uncomfortable because some people feel an obligation to the time that their potential candidate has invested in you, but this is your marriage and it's important. The next question then is, do you hold a ministry degree? Obtaining a ministry degree outside of a seminary would be a bit unusual. Most mainstream clergy have obtained formal ministry training. Degrees such as Master of Ministry, Master of Divinity, Doctor of Ministry, these are things that are common to clergy. Another good reason to ask this question is to focus a little bit on the things that seminary training would have included. One of those being homiletics. And you're probably asking now, well, why is that important? Well, it's important because this is the person that's going to be delivering the ceremony to you, to your fiance, and to all of your guests. Homiletics encompasses the study of and the composition of the delivery of a sermon. It can be further defined as the study of or analysis or classification, preparation, composition, all of that delivery stuff for a sermon. And although your officiant may not be delivering a sermon as such, in the sense that you might see, say, in a worship setting, he or she will be delivering, hopefully in a meaningful way, the content of the celebration of your marriage. My guess is that most of you watching this webinar or listening to this webinar have been in weddings that have been bordered on a train wreck, a wreck that was due to the officiant's lack of skill or lack of training. So this is something to think about. Fourth question is, which organization provided your ordination? Now this is a good question to help weed out the legitimate and the not so legitimate officiants. This inquiry should include a point-blank question about whether the credential was obtained through internet resources. There's a book titled The Handbook of Denominations in the United States, and this is kind of a go-to book that lists 200 legitimate organizations, 200 legitimate denominations. Ask your prospective officiant if his or her ordaining body is listed in that handbook, And if this ordaining body that they claim to be connected with is not listed there, then this should be raising a red flag for you as well. Question number 5, how long have you been ordained? Now, the internet is relatively young, and the wedding industry has been flooded in recent years with, I'll put this in quotes, clergy who have been created online for a fee. Illegitimate clergy lurk online with official sounding names that begin with pastor or some other self-appointed title. If you meet someone that has been ordained, say within the last 10 years, you may want to ask further questions about the legitimacy of their ordination. The next question here, number 6. Are you involved in a ministry outside of performing weddings? If you are considering getting married by someone claiming to be ordained, but they only utilize their credentials to perform weddings, then what does that really say? You may want to avoid being married by someone who became a minister for the sole purpose of marrying people. This question should also help reveal whether the clergy person you are considering is motivated by a calling to serve or an opportunity to gain a few dollars. You should also ask about their occupation outside of performing weddings. You may find that this would-be officiant actually serves as an insurance salesperson, a mechanic, a banquet manager, a wedding planner, or some other occupation unrelated to ministry. So we've covered these 2 practical classes of persons that are authorized to perform marriages in the state of Illinois. We've touched on those not quite so practical, such as the Court of Claims judge, some mysterious public official, or the Cook County clerk. The next 4 questions, these come from the book, focus on the quality of your ceremony and they attempt to offer some assurance that your ceremony will take place just the way that you planned it. So here's question number 7. Have you ever missed a wedding? Hopefully you're going to get an honest answer here. The question should also lead you to ask how many weddings the prospective officiant performs over a busy weekend. Then assess the risk of having your officiant arrive late for your ceremony. Question number 8. Are you going to be there or send someone else on our wedding day? Make sure you don't skip asking this question. Couples seldom consider the possibility that the person that they are considering as their officiant may provide a substitute on their wedding day. If you are comfortable in your belief that the one you've met with is right for you, then get their promise and get it in writing, stating that they are going to be there on your wedding day. Number 9, can we design our own ceremony? If your officiant is primarily committed to just filling the booking calendar, there may be a reluctance to allow you full control over your wedding. So ask your officiant if he or she is open to you customizing your celebration and to what extent you may do so. That's a very important question. And then the last question, number 10, what is the process for creating our ceremony? Obtain a clear understanding of the creative process before committing to an officiant. Ask if you can have an advance copy of the ceremony draft a few weeks before your wedding. This will help avoid surprises on your wedding day. While we are on the subject of avoiding surprises, and avoiding those by obtaining a draft, be sure to guard against wedding hijacking, either by the officiant or by people who may be participating as readers or some other way of participating in your ceremony. What do I mean by hijacking? Well, let me share some examples. And these come from the book, so I'll just read them to you. I had a wedding at Shram Chapel in Glenview where a couple followed a relatively traditional approach to their ceremony. Included in the order of service was a reading to be announced by the father of the groom. When I asked about an advance copy of the reading, thinking I might be able to incorporate commentary on it, the couple stated that Dad intended it to be a surprise for them. Okay, that's not really all that unusual. The surprise, however, was that Dad took over 10 minutes to deliver, and I put this in quotes, the reading. Again, that's not a huge issue, but the content that he delivered turned out to be an even bigger surprise for this couple, one that surely offended many that were in attendance. Dad delivered a sermon on how Christ had changed his life, and further shared with the non-Christian guests, of whom some were Muslim, some Jewish, there were some Sikhs, there were some Hindus, but he shared with them how Christ could change their lives as well. While Dad may have been sharing what he believed to be true, the mix of people present were primarily from the medical community in which this couple worked. They came to share in the celebration of marriage for this couple. They did not come to hear how Christ could change their lives. I've seen similar situations where couples have trusted family or friends to surprise them, and they were surprised or they were mortified in a big way. And it's not just friends and family that run things off the track. I, and perhaps you, have heard of officiants being moved to go off script. I remember talking with a couple who had celebrated their wedding in a Naperville chapel. They shared how surprised they were when their officiant broke into an unplanned, very off-key a cappella solo, simply because she felt led to do so. I've heard stories of ministers running off script and choosing to add what some Protestants would consider an altar call to the wedding's order of service. The point here is this: make sure you maintain control over the content of the wedding that you're going to be having. Choose an officiant who is willing to follow your approved script. Choose an officiant who is legally qualified to marry you. And choose an officiant who has the skill, experience, and certainly plenty of reviews to verify all those qualities that you're seeking. Be sure to use the 10 questions to ask your officiant resource. So now here's the bonus question I promised. We had 10 questions and then one bonus question. And here's the bonus question. If you can't make it to our wedding, what is your backup plan? I have married over 3,000 people and met with all those people at some point in their planning process. And there are probably fewer than 10 or 20 of those people who raise this question. It just surprises me. But the question here is, if you can't make it to our wedding, what is your backup plan? If something happens, who's going to marry you? So that about covers the material for this segment. Now it's quiz time. We have had 10 questions for your potential officiant. Now your quiz comes next, but it only has 2 questions. The first is, besides legitimate judges, public officials with special powers, the Cook County Clerk, and legitimate clergy, who else can perform your marriage? As you can see on the screen, is it A, none, B, Justice of the Peace, C, a certified wedding officiant, or D, a self-proclaimed reverend or pastor something? Well, the answer obviously here is A, none. There are only 5 classes, plus or minus nothing. There are 5 classes, and from a practical standpoint, it's either a judge or a legitimate clergy. Number 2, what happens if someone is not authorized to perform my wedding and we allow it anyway? Here are the possible answers. A, none. I may just get away with it. Many couples have. B, I might not get away with doing something I know is illegal. Some couples have not. C, it doesn't matter to me because I place little value on the integrity of my commitment. Or D, all of the above. And in this question, the correct answer is D, all of the above. It could be any one of those 3 answers, or all of those 3 answers to that question. What happens if you go through with this with someone that you know is not authorized to marry you? If you have questions about this webinar or about the book titled Getting Married in Illinois, please contact me through the Service Minister's website or through the video log at chicagowedding.org. Now it looks like we have a handful of questions, so let's move on to the question from Marcy. Here Marcy asked, "So Mary, thank you for writing. I hope you found this resource to be helpful, and I hope everyone was able to take a few helpful notes. If you have a topic that you would like to have presented, let us know through the contact page here at chicagowedding.org. I would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to sign up to be notified when additional wedding minutes are being posted."